Alright, before we get started here today, I need to take you all on a little scroll down memory lane. It's been almost 5 years since I covered my very first game in anything even remotely resembling my modern format. In July 2019, I released my video on Sonic the Hedgehog, and while what I would consider the absolute starting point is a little bit fuzzy, this is definitely an excellent candidate for the very first entry in whatever you want to call this thing I'm doing now. Covering games. At the time of recording, almost half a decade ago, I had never played a Sonic game. And while I did technically rectify that particular issue, despite the fact that I would go on to play many a 2D platformer across a variety of franchises, I never touched the Sonic series again. Now, of course, the plan today is to fix that, but not by jumping in with Sonic 2. Instead, we're going to be revisiting the first game. I'm doing this for a few reasons, some more obvious than others. For starters, that video just doesn't hold up very well, even by my standards much closer to release. Arguably more important than that, though, is the fact that in my original playthrough, I didn't even 100% complete the game. Yeah, I know, scandalous. It just wasn't something I was doing at the time. This was so long ago, I didn't even consider myself a completionist yet. That's not all, though, and I promise this is going somewhere, so just bear with me for a second. Alright, so the classic 2D Sonic quadrilogy, or I guess Quintology, depending on whether you consider Sonic and Knuckles a separate game or consider it DLC for Sonic 3, is a series of 16-bit platformers all released on the Sega Genesis and Sega CD throughout the 90s. Garnering immense popularity, these titles would go on to be re-released together or individually an innumerable amount of times across basically every console generation. Some of these port jobs were definitely better than others, but for the most part, these took the form of simple one-to-one emulations of the original titles, and that was totally fine until a man named Christian Whitehead came along. You may recognize that name as belonging to the guy who headed up development on the critically acclaimed Sonic Mania, but before that, he was actually being contracted by Sega to work on remasters of the classic series. We're talking the works, a glorious 16:9 aspect ratio, quality of life improvements from later entries, and even new characters. It was perfect, everything, down to the last detail. That is, excluding one small problem. For some reason, Sega opted to make these versions only available on mobile. Yeah, iPad kids rejoice, but everybody on consoles or PC, they were left to languish with Genesis ROMs. That's obviously the version I played, and I made sure to make it a big point in that video to call out this clear shortcoming. Sega, release the Whitehead cut. Well, it may have taken a while, but in 2022, they finally answered. That's right. This is also a video about Sonic Origins. This little bundle of joy includes every game in the classic series faithfully remastered for modern screens and modern audiences, and all for the low price of only $40! That was before the DLC! Yeah, unfortunately, this game's release came with a fair bit of controversy, mostly centered around how they thought it would be a good idea to delist every other release of these titles so you would have no choice but to drop money on this version if you wanted to play the classics. This is obviously repugnant, but for me, I was almost more offended by the price. I still wanted to pick up Origins, but I just could not bring myself to drop even $20 for the Plus edition on discount. Apparently, I'm not the only person that refused to bite though, because while I was checking Steam sales, Walmart was basically chucking these things in the dumpster out back trying to get rid of them. That's how, with the help of a Wario64 tweet and curbside pickup, I was able to get my hands on the last copy of this Xbox release at my local store for only $6, and I still feel like I spent too much money on this. Yeah, I am not a big fan of physical games these days, but when they're this cheap, I guess I'll make an exception. Although, I would just like to take a moment to point out the fact that even though the DLC is not included on the disc, like, it's just a download code inside the box, for some reason, they felt the need to put the plus art on the label, which is just inaccurate. Like, they did a whole reprint of this disc just to lie to you about what's on it, which doesn't make any sense to me. Now, technically, this video is going to be kind of a four-parter. This compilation includes 4 main series titles, and they're each going to get their own videos. Now, obviously, I'll have to talk about Origins a little bit in each of them, but believe it or not, for reasons we will definitely discuss more later on, I feel like even after having only played the first title, I am more than ready to deliver a verdict on this collection as a whole. So for the sake of keeping those videos slightly more streamlined, strap in because I'm about to give you my official take on Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic Origins. Alright, approaching 1,000 words in, and I'm just now getting to the fact that in Sonic the Hedgehog, you play as Sonic the Hedgehog. The titular mammal lives a peaceful life on South Island until one day the dastardly Dr. Ivo Robotnik lands in the area with the intention of stealing the 6 powerful Chaos Emeralds and taking over the world. As part of his evil plot, the mad scientist begins capturing the area's peaceful animal inhabitants and transforming them into robotic horrors he calls badniks. This, of course, cannot be allowed to stand, so it's up to Sonic to jump, dash, and spin his way through 6 zones, each containing 3 2D platforming levels. As was more or less typical of releases of the era, obviously you don't actually learn any of this story in-game. If you wanted to, know what was going on, you would have had to have read supplementary material like the manual or the back of the box. Something really cool that they've done for Origins, though, is actually added an all-new fully animated cutscene that plays on first boot. It just recaps the story told in the manual, but the art is absolutely gorgeous. You can tell a lot of love was put in here, and it's a good way to give a little bit of context to new players before dumping them into level 1. Once you get there though, you're in for a treat. Green Hill Zone has been called the perfect Sonic level, taking you through a beautiful and lush environment as you familiarize yourself with the game's core mechanics of running, jumping, and importantly, gaining insane amounts of speed. It's great that they start you out in such a good tutorial level, because if you're coming from, Mario or other similar games, it may take you a little while to wrap your head around some of this game's more unique trappings. For starters, you won't be jumping on heads. At least, not in the way you're used to. Jumping automatically curls your body into a spiky ball that can damage enemies on contact, so you don't need to worry about what angle you hit them from as long as you make sure you're in ball form. Additionally, things like power-ups aren't nearly as prevalent. You can find item boxes hidden throughout stages, and they can definitely give you a boost, either in the form of temporary invincibility or a shield allowing you to tank one additional hit, but for the most part, in this game, you'll be operating on the ring system. The ring system is one of the most iconic features in the Sonic franchise, and for good reason. It just works really well. Basically, as you travel throughout stages, one of your main secondary objectives is to gather as many golden rings as possible. These things kind of serve as your life force, holding even one of them is enough to guarantee you can sustain a single hit, but the trade-off is that any damage will cause you to scatter all of your rings to the ground. It's a simple idea, but it feels very nice in practice. Rings are really satisfying to collect, far more than comparable collectibles in similar games if you ask me, and this setup allows for a pretty high level of difficulty modulation by limiting your access to them in areas like boss fights. Beyond any of the more superficial choices though, 2D Sonic simply has a fundamentally different platforming philosophy than many of the titles I'm used to. I feel like a lot of people coming in might expect that you spend a majority or at least a lot of your time plowing through areas at blazing speed, relying on lightning fast inputs to keep you out of harm's way. In reality though, there are a lot of sections you'll be expected to take on slowly and methodically, and the level design isn't at all afraid of punishing you if you rush into things too quickly. For the most part, speed is given to you as a reward for completing a slower paced challenge involving trickier platforming. I like this approach a lot because, again, it allows for a level of speed modulation, whereby overcoming more traditional obstacles makes huge bursts of speed feel all the more rewarding. The only issue I have with any of the design in this regard is that it can definitely feel like there's an occasional missing middle you'll fall into, where you'll find a slope that was obviously meant to be taken at speed, but if you somehow manage to arrive there going more slowly or you need to backtrack, it's insanely difficult and frustrating to get up. This is not a common problem, but it does pop up occasionally. Believe it or not though, it's actually addressed in the Anniversary mode of Sonic Origins. In this mode, you have access to the Spin Dash, a move introduced in later games that allows you to quickly build up a large amount of speed. It's shocking how well this fits into the first title. You would never be able to tell it wasn't originally here. It really doesn't make anything any easier, but it paves over some of the rougher design snags and allows levels to flow more smoothly. For the most part though, the stages in this game are fairly well designed. As I mentioned previously, your adventure is broken up into a number of discrete zones, each of which contains 3 levels and a boss fight. Each zone has a different theme, and along with it, a unique aesthetic, soundtrack, and even unique gameplay trappings, with difficulty of course supposedly increasing as you progress. Some of the areas in the first game are definitely more liked than others, but honestly, I think the vast majority of them are pretty good. A lot of people complain about the slower pace of Marble Zone for instance, but personally, I really enjoyed its color palette and didn't find the platforming all that frustrating. Honestly, I didn't even have that much trouble with Labyrinth Zone this time around, although to be clear, it still sucks. It's an underwater level, which was already going to be unpopular, but I guess they were worried about not getting enough hate mail or something because they decided they needed to include a 3-stage long underwater maze with a limited air supply, and then significantly decrease your movement speed while submerged. The rest of the game is pretty okay though. I enjoyed Spring Yard Zone, Starlight Zone, and even Scrap Brain Zone was fine, although to be clear, not all sailing was smooth. Honestly, I feel like as they tried to ratchet up the difficulty, they weren't entirely sure how, so you end up with some questionable choices in some of the later levels. There's a much higher emphasis on instant kill traps, for example, which doesn't really match the spirit of the ring system, and it seems like especially the last couple of stages almost encourage you to just force your way through uncheesed invincibility frames thanks to the often unfair feeling enemy or obstacle placement. The boss fights are pretty fun though. They cap off each zone, and each relies on a unique if simple mechanic/pattern you'll need to successfully execute to emerge victorious. Starlight Zones was of course a standout, and I just want 5 minutes alone with anyone involved in designing Labyrinth Zone's boss. Just taking down Dr. Robotnik though won't be enough to get the good ending and save the world or whatever. If you're going for 100%, you'll need to collect all 6, yeah, it's 7 in every other game, but it's 6 in this one, Chaos Emeralds, something that I failed to do in my original playthrough. These things can be collected in bonus stages, which are accessed by finishing any non-boss level with at least 50 rings. I found this challenge to be more annoying than engaging, if I'm being honest. It's not too difficult or anything, but remember, getting hit causes you to drop all of your rings, and while, depending on the circumstances, you can usually pick several of them back up, in practice this basically means you'll need to play through at least half of the stage without taking any damage. Again, it's not that hard, but again, it totally negates the philosophy of the ring system, and it's just anxiety-inducing. Like, unless you're having a perfect run, you're always worried if you're going to end up having enough. The bonus stages aren't much better. You're flung like a pinball into this LSD trip-inspired free-spinning maze that you have no direct control over. The Chaos Emerald lies somewhere in the center, usually protected by some blocks you have to break before you can claim your prize. Certain tiles make the maze speed up, slow down, or change direction, and you can try to use them to your advantage, but they're just as likely to hurt you if you bump into them accidentally. The real threat here is the goal blocks though. Hit one of those and you're ejected from the stage and sent on to the next level empty-handed. I don't know how to feel about these courses. I mean, to be fair, while they might feel random at first, there is actually a skill to them, and they can also be kind of fun once you know what you're doing, but like, on the other hand, half the time they feel like they're designed to pull a cheap one on you or something, and can be more frustrating than satisfying. I guess the silver lining is, if you play your cards right, you can knock all of these out before you even finish Springyard Zone, leaving you completely unencumbered for the more difficult back half of the game. It's not hard to enjoy yourself though when a game looks and sounds this nice. Sonic 1 definitely set a new standard in that regard for 2D platformers of the era, making excellent use of 16-bit graphics to design iconic enemies and vibrant backgrounds. It, of course, looks better than ever in Origins Anniversary mode, lovingly remastered in glorious 16:9 with one of the better retro soundtracks in history completely intact. The changes weren't all aesthetic though. As I mentioned before, there are a number of quality of life improvements in the Anniversary mode as well. In addition to the spin dash, which we already covered, these mainly come from the abolition of the life system as well as the added ability to retry bonus stages. Back in the original release, dying would cost you a life, losing all your lives would cost you a continue, and losing all of your continues would send you back to the title screen. This is a classic setup that was used in innumerable games of the era, but it's safe to say this approach to difficulty design has fallen well out of fashion. Personally, there is little I find more off-putting than when a game uses loss of progress as a form of punishment. It's frustrating, so one could reasonably assume I'd be over the moon to have this feature removed. And yeah, this is definitely more approachable for modern audiences. The problem is, they don't replace it with anything. You can just die infinite times and nothing bad ever happens to you, which feels really cheap in a game that was originally meant to be completed in a certain number of tries. Functionally infinite attempts on the bonus stages is super scuffed as well. Like, these could be a struggle, but the difficulty design was actually fairly well balanced, so you'd think they could stay as they are, but no. So okay, Anniversary mode is a little on the easy side. Clearly not ideal. What other options do you have? Well, as it turns out, both few and many. If you want to modify the Anniversary mode rule set at all, maybe make it a bit more challenging, you're completely out of luck. No such options are available. You can always play Classic mode though, a one-to-one emulation of the original game, which kind of defeats the purpose of this release. It's not even a particularly good rendition either. I mean, it works, but you can't change the scaling, can't change the aspect ratio, there aren't any filters, you don't get any basic quality of life features like save states or rewind, and most annoying to me, you can't change or even disable the stupid border on the sides of the screen. Okay guys, late night editor's note, apparently I was actually wrong about that last thing. You can actually change the letterbox design. There are a variety of options available, including my personal favorite, plain black. I just never realized you could do this because for some reason this isn't a setting you can access in-game like you would expect. It's only available in a universal options menu, which is inexplicably hidden in the museum section. So yeah, I was wrong about border options, but even with that in mind, these are all incredibly basic options that would be included in even the most pared back emulator, and what do you know, were even included in the versions of the game Sega delisted, so you'd be forced to buy Origins. A step backwards, how fun. I definitely felt compelled to do a playthrough of this mode though, given how easy Anniversary was, including collecting all 6 Chaos Emeralds. Believe it or not though, it was actually the very last thing I did in this whole ordeal, because first, I had to contend with all the bonus characters. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier, if you're playing the Plus version of the game, straight from first boot, you'll be able to take on Sonic 1 without Sonic, diving into the game as either Tails, Knuckles, or Amy Rose. Initially, I wasn't all that interested in checking these out, but in the spirit of completionism, I decided to give each character a try and did a total of 3 additional campaign playthroughs complete with Chaos Emerald collections so you could hear my thoughts. Essentially, these characters basically just act as pseudo-easy modes. Amy's hammer means she has a farther reach and can make quicker work of enemies and bosses. Knuckles' gliding and wall climbing abilities give him a huge boost in some platforming sections, and Tails' ability to fly lets you completely skip at least half the levels in the game. In order of difficulty, I would say that Tails is the easiest, followed by Knuckles, followed by Amy, with Sonic being the hardest. This sets up a bit of a questionable progression. Like, technically all of these campaigns are available to you from the start, but naturally the majority of people are going to choose to play as Sonic initially because that was the original intended experience. If you do that though, then all you're left with is 3 easier playthroughs, and I'm not really sure how appealing that would be to most people. What I will say though is that doing 4 playthroughs of the Anniversary mode actually had an unexpected side effect. It made my time in Classic mode much more enjoyable. It makes a lot of sense when you think about it. This is a retro title. Back in the day, you were meant to play it over and over again. Sure, maybe your first experience was a little janky, but your objective was to keep playing until you mastered the game. Most modern audiences, though, understandably, won't be doing this, so all they're going to have to look back on is their frustrating initial impressions. By adding several additional characters, though, it gives new players a compelling reason to do several playthroughs, causing them to, unintentionally, become more and more familiar with the levels, until, by their final playthrough, they're able to blast through Classic mode no problem. This is actually kind of genius if you're of the mind that this is something the devs did intentionally. Here we have the bones of a really solid incentive structure, a way to get modern audiences to engage with the original material in a fashion more reminiscent of what would have been expected at the time. Now all we need is a compelling reason to participate, a reason for players to actually feel the need to go the extra mile and play these additional modes. Yeah, okay. I think I'm ready. It's time to talk about achievements. Alright, I'm sure this is going to seem like I'm going off on a complete tangent, but I've never actually explained my philosophy on this sort of thing, and now seems like a fairly good opportunity, so I'm going to ask you to just stick with me for a little bit. I promise this is going somewhere. Essentially, the way I see it, there are 2 camps of people in the doing everything there is to do in video games community. On the one hand, you have achievement hunters. These people live and breathe achievements. They primarily play games that have them, and when they do, their main objective is just to collect them all. On the other hand, you'll find completionists. They may or may not care about achievements. They'll certainly collect them all if they're playing a game that has them, but their primary focus is just on 100% completing everything they play, doing absolutely everything a title has to offer, regardless of what the achievement list says. Personally, I consider myself to be both. I love achievements, and I'm willing to go way out of my way to play games with them, but at the end of the day, I am a completionist. I'm here to do everything that there is to do in every single game that I play, achievements or not. That said, I am of the opinion that a good achievement list will encapsulate the 100% experience. In other words, I believe that it should not be possible to collect every achievement without also completing 100% of the game's content. A title shouldn't be displayed at 100% on your profile if there's still stuff you haven't done, and I definitely knock points anytime I encounter a list that fails to incorporate a challenge from the main game. Sonic Origins is the worst example of this I have ever had the displeasure of experiencing. To cut to the chase, Origins achievement list requires you to do basically nothing. Beat each game in any mode, play a couple of dirt easy challenges, and select a couple of things in some menus. That's it. You don't have to beat the game in Classic mode, you don't have to beat the game as any of the other characters, you only have to do like 3 of the optional challenges, you hardly have to unlock any of the museum content. And oh yeah, I haven't talked about that yet, the bonus content. In addition to the 4 main titles, Origin includes a mission mode where you can take on a number of short trials segregated by their base game. Sonic 1 has 18 associated challenges, each assigned 1 through 5 stars according to difficulty level. This type of inclusion can definitely be hit or miss in compilations, but these are actually pretty well made. Certainly not necessary, as it were, but each one represents a good 1 to 2 minute romp, with the 5-star challenges definitely being hard enough to warrant a few tries. The problem is, in order to earn the only achievement associated with this mode, you only have to complete 10 of them. Not only is that, well, not how 100% works, this only takes you into the 3-star territory, a difficulty level roughly analogous to compromising the structural integrity of a wet paper bag. Don't worry though, that's not why you're supposed to complete the mission mode. You see, getting an S rank in each challenge rewards you with coins, and you can spend them in the museum to unlock things like art pieces, animatics, and parts of the soundtrack. Awesome, okay, this is how they'll tie it all together. Kind of a 2-for-1 deal. You'll need to unlock all of these, and in order to earn enough coins, you'll have to 100% the mission mode. Except, no! You only need like 4 of each! In fact, you need so few that I was able to earn every associated achievement by only S-ranking the Sonic 1 missions. I am going to lose my mind! That's why I felt comfortable talking about Sonic Origins as a whole before completing any of the other games, because I already did everything! This game's achievement list is so pathetic, I can knock them all out while only playing content associated with the first title. I've done it all! The only achievements left I haven't gotten are all game-specific. I'm talking about the compilation now because if I waited until I was covering a later game, I wouldn't have anything to talk about. It's like they did this just to mess with me personally. They included completion percentages in the game. It should not be possible to have a game display at 100% on your profile and then click on it only to be met with 34%, 25%, 0%. This is what kills me. This will be the thing that kills me. It's okay though. It's okay. Nobody plays these games for the bonus content anyway. All I'm really after at the end of the day is a way to display proudly on my Exoface profile or whatever that I have 100% completed Sonic the Hedgehog. Except... You're not going to believe me when I tell you. There isn't even an achievement for collecting all of the Chaos Emeralds! What is wrong with these people? The one thing that is unequivocally part of the 100% completion process, the one part of the original game that you would want represented in an achievement list, and even after giving you infinite lives and allowing retries of the bonus stages, they aren't comfortable asking you to do even that. I hate it here. I cannot do this anymore. This is the legacy of Sonic Origins. Guys, they didn't even bother to change the new closing cutscene depending on which ending you got. This animation makes no sense in the context of an incomplete playthrough. This could have been a release for the ages, the unambiguous definitive way to play the classic series Sonic games. No caveats. And in a lot of ways, it still is, thanks in part to the fact that Sega took away any semblance of choice you may have had in the matter, but it's clear that there were some incredibly passionate people involved in this release. Despite any complaints I may have made, to be clear, Christian Whitehead did an amazing job on these remasters, and while I wish they had a bit more customizability, for the vast majority of people, they are far and away the best version of these titles that have ever been available. It's just so insanely off-putting to me that they spent all of whatever time on overly complicated 3D menus and unskippable animatics, and then neglected the most base level features like scaling options or, you know, achievements for doing literally anything. I wish I could offer an alternative, or tell you that you don't have to play Origins if you want to complete these games. But realistically, for my fellow achievement hunters, this is likely the only way you're ever going to have any of these classic titles represented on your profiles. And if you couldn't tell, I definitely think that at least Sonic 1 so far is worth revisiting. It's an enjoyable romp, a solid platformer, and if that's all you're looking for, Origins is an amazing way to play it. It's just such a shame that I'm always going to have a slight tweak in my eye when I see it on my list of 100% completed games. Origins, though, is not there yet, so stay tuned for next time when I will finally be taking a look at Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I am deeply ashamed by the length of this video, but I hope you can see what I was going for. By shoving all of my Origins baggage into a video intended to talk about a game that realistically I've already covered, I should now be able to do much more simple and streamlined coverage of Sonic 2, CD, and 3 and Knuckles, games I've yet to experience or talk about. If you made it this far though, obviously you saw something you like, so why not consider a thumbs up, and while you're at it, leave a comment letting me know what you think. Which classic series Sonic title is your favorite? I would love to hear from you. Then of course, if you haven't already, think about subscribing. I've still got lots of Sonic games to cover. You wouldn't want to miss that, would you? And while you're doing that, why not follow me on social media? I post on TikTok now. You can find all that along with any of the music that I used in this video in the description below. I guess I should probably get on with this, so thanks for watching.